What's been your most memorable trip?
Wow, a kayak trip I took. It was in January down on the coast. I'm not much of a planner. I thought it would take 3 days, and for 3 days the weather was supposed to be nice, but you know, in a kayak, the difference between 15-mile-per-hour winds and 20-mile-per-hour winds is whether or not you can even be on the water. It doesn't take much wind. And so the wind was a little bit stronger than the forecast was, and it was a fight for my life, because right after that it was below freezing. You know, I'd wake up, my water, my food, my shoes, everything was frozen solid, and I came really close to death. Anytime we get, you know, face to face with death like that, it just puts everything in perspective, you know, as to what's really important in life. And more than anything, that trip made me realize that the most precious thing we have in this life is our relationships with the people we love. Everything else pales in comparison. My name's David Francis Eckerd. I was born February 3rd, 1960 in El Torrejon, Spain. Say I meet a doctor or a nurse or anybody, and they'll go, well, what if everybody lived like you? And my answer is always the same. Well, what if everybody was a doctor? Things wouldn't work out either, would they? You know, what I do is I go gather wood in the woods every day, and I build a fire, and I cook my breakfast. And it's just so far out of the mainstream that, you know, I become like an oddball of sorts. You know, it takes all kinds of people living all kinds of ways to make the whole picture work. The only wild animals I ever worried about were on two legs. I would be walking in the city and, you know, having a backpack, you look kind of homeless. More than once I'd find myself cornered. It would just be someone who would try to sucker punch me or something. But nothing actually ever happened because I can run fast. And all I have to do is run into a wooded area. And so my attitude was, come into my world. This is where I rule. Generally, you know, I can go for 2 or 3 days without eating. I'm hungry a lot. I tell people that the secret to delicious food is to only eat when you're hungry. If you're really hungry, just plain crackers taste so good. I went to the University of Notre Dame. I went to study microbiology, and I realized that that was going to lead me into staying in a lab. I've just wanted to live outside. I actually got to where I was drinking way too much, and at some point along the way I became a smuggler. I smuggled marijuana. You know, I had what you would call the American dream. I owned a 3-bedroom home in the suburbs. I was managing, you know, a family business. I had all the trappings of the American dream, and I was miserable. And a lot of it was because of my drinking. And so that's what started this whole life of, you know, exploring the inner world. Was I went to AA, and if I wanted to figure out why I was drinking and partying so much in the first place, you know, I just completely quit drinking, and I just started simplifying my life. The prime driver for all animals is eating. It's basically what we do. We just eat and shit. You know, if you were to cut around our mouth and cut around our butt and stretch us out, we're basically a 35-foot worm, you know, coiled up in this bag. And that's the bulk of what we do, is we just eat, eat, eat. And that's one of the things that's so incredibly comforting in learning which wild plants to eat or how to grow a garden, is that we realize that just in doing that, or learning how to hunt, we don't depend on the grocery store for our food. I've only been to the doctor maybe, 1, 2, 3 times in my life. The reason that I remain so healthy is I'll start by just taking a few sips the first day of the raw water. And what that does is it just allows my body to get used to whatever new microbes or parasites might be in the water. You know, as soon as we are living a stressful life, that's when we lose our ease. And that's where the word dis-ease comes from. By living a stressful life, that's what puts the welcome out for us getting sick. So I got bit by this snake. My neighbor just happened to stop by. I just told him, I said, well, Frank, I got bit by a poisonous snake. And we're driving to the emergency room, and I said, well, Frank, if I die, you can have my tractor. And he got real upset. He goes, you're not gonna die, you're not gonna die. So I was just kind of laughing about the whole thing. And the doctor came in and he said, I asked him, I said, look, sir, I said, I have no insurance. And I said, I don't want a $200 Band-Aid. And he said, yeah, you don't want these shots if you don't need them. They're $15,000 a piece. He said, we're done here. You can just chop this hand off and keep it. And I'll walk home. So, because I knew I probably wouldn't die, you know, being a healthy adult. My hand looked like a balloon with little sticks sticking out of it. About 10 days later, I realized that the pain was completely gone. The snake healed me, essentially. In Thailand, they use snake venom for medicine, especially for arthritis. They say that if you freak out, that the poison goes to your heart and it hurts you. But if you relax, it moves through your body and it heals you. And it's not like just the pain disappeared. I mean, I felt like $1 million. I'm like, what the heck happened here? You know, I get bit by this poisonous snake and I have never felt better in my life. My body just felt like so alive and energized. That's when I really got deep into my meditating. I realized how uncomfortable it was to just not move, to just stay in one place. It's like, okay, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. So I decided I was gonna do it just to explore what happens when we just stay put for a long period of time. And it was actually an incredible experience. And what makes it really so profound is that, you know, our mind works in two ways. We have the mind of awareness that just sits there and soaks everything up. And then we have the engaged mind, or the ego mind, that goes out and imagines things, creates things, and all we can see is what we're engaged with. But when we stop our thoughts, my mind is just sitting there, and it's the whole world starts coming in. It's when my thoughts aren't there, I can hear birds, but not just the birds, I can hear everything. I never feel more alive than when my thoughts have stopped, and I'm just here wherever I am, soaking everything up in this world. There were 8 kids in the family, and you know, Mom and Dad said that there's no way they could afford hotels for that many kids, and camping was just the cheapest way to travel. And you know, most kids love being outdoors, so that kind of provided the groundwork for me to just expand from that, you know, going into wilder and wilder places. My dad, he was in the Air Force, and he was kind of like, you know, I call them hard hits, do your duty. He did the exact same thing every day. My mom was pretty wild and free, but she was the one who really wore the pants in the family. I would say our family is probably more matriarchal in general. She was the one that would just, let's go to Colorado, take all the kids, and something like that. And whereas Dad was a lot more thoughtful and deliberate. I heard through the grapevine it was time to go home. I told both my parents I'd take care of them when they needed somebody. And so 3 friends and I walked from here in the mountains to the coast, and I started taking care of her. And my father was in 2 world wars, and he had been shot down in a helicopter in Vietnam.
And he said nothing was as difficult for him as taking care of his wife through Alzheimer's. When we take care of an old person and they're just going to slowly be fading out, it enriched my spirit like nothing else in this world. Everything is temporary. It's all a big mystery. We're just here for a short while, and the purpose of life is to be happy.